Basu Godin Notebook. 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 Hey, Arpin.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
All right. So,
Fancy meeting you here.
yeah, it's nice, huh? Surprising. Surprising on a Friday. What am I doing on Friday? Oh, yeah, the BasuandGodin Notebook. So, have a good Friday, everybody. I hope you've been having a good day so far. Arpin, we were watching the game against Minnesota last night, and we've heard Martin St. Louis on a few occasions already so far this season, and the players do say, "Oh well, if we keep playing the way we play, we're going to win more games than we lose." Now, I've been irritated by that saying on occasions, and yesterday they did not score a single goal and they lost 3-0. But it's the sort of performance and the sort of structure that they applied on their game that I would be comfortable hearing them say that, because it's true that if they keep going in that direction, tightening things and making less and less mistakes, they're going to be back on the winning side. It seems as though there's something encouraging, despite the win-loss record. There's something encouraging in their play, not only on Thursday in Minnesota, but maybe in their last 4 games.
Yeah. Well, listen, they're not bleeding scoring chances anymore. Obviously the Matt Boldy goal that opened the scoring came off a neutral zone turnover by Christian Dvorak, and then was just an elite play by Kaprizov and Johansson to create that goal. I have a hard time giving out blame on that goal, aside from the original sin of turning the puck over in the neutral zone the way Dvorak did. And by and large, generally speaking, the Canadiens kept the Wild out of the dangerous area of the ice. I mean, both goals came from that area, but one of them came at the very end of a 4-minute penalty kill. And obviously the Boldy goal I just described. So, if you look at their underlying numbers, their expected goals against per 60 this month, but especially in the last 4 games, is way down. And it's actually, I think it's top 10 in the league at this point. So over that span. The problem is that the expected goals for per 60 is at the bottom of the league. So they need to find a better balance there. But the way they were bleeding chances in October has largely been resolved. They just have to learn how to play offensively again. And that's obviously came through against Minnesota. Like, every chance they had was shot right into Philip Gustafsson's gut. I thought the logo in his jersey was going to start wearing out after a while. So still work to be done. Definitely still a work in progress, but I think the defensive work that they've been doing for a while now is bearing some fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Offensively for sure. Martin St. Louis was hoping for volume, and the Canadiens have a hard time getting to 30 shots. It has not happened very often this year for this team. But otherwise, you talk about underlying numbers. There's something that I tweeted this morning, looking at their the expected goals and the high danger chances. In their first 13 games of the year, they were their expected goals 5-on-5 was 41.31%. Last in the league in that sense. And in the last 4 games, they're at 49.41, which is pretty much middle of the pack. And for high danger chances in the first 13 games, they had 40.4% of high danger chances. Again, pretty much at the bottom of the league, and they're at 50% in the last 4 games. It's not a lot. We're talking about that sample size is the game in Jersey, the one against Toronto, and then you have the 2 latest games, the win in Buffalo and that game last night against Minnesota. So it's only 4 games, but I think that if the Canadiens are looking to see, are we at least trending in a encouraging direction, we can safely say that there is progress lately in that sense. So that's it's not all bad, I guess.
No, that's that high danger chance number is made even better because they were outchanced 7-2 at 5-on-5 against Minnesota. So that number was even better heading into that game. But yeah, there is some good. It just seems like, and I asked Marty this, I think in Toronto, like, do you just get the sense that you're always chasing something? Like, this team as of yet has not been able to put together a well-rounded, well-balanced effort where offensively they're dangerous, defensively they're sound, they're making crisp passes. Like there's always an area of their game that seems to be lacking. But I did see the Minnesota game as much more of a step forward than the Buffalo game. Like the Buffalo game, guys were coming out and being like, "We just have to play like that," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, and we went over it. We went over it on the podcast already, but it's, like, to me, I'm with you. Like hearing Marty say that after the game in Minnesota made a lot more sense than hearing anyone say it after the game in Buffalo. It was just, there were two completely different games. And I think the main quote, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't remember it exactly, but Marty saying that's one of the most structured teams in the league. And we stood with them structure wise. We were with them. We went toe to toe with them structure wise. And I agree with that. He's right. You give up the power play goal, one goal against at 5-on-5, which is again an elite play by Kirill Kaprizov, which that pass victimized Dvorak also. So it was a turnover, and then he got back, he had his man, and I can't really blame him for not anticipating Kirill Kaprizov to suddenly spin and hit a perfect pass through the crease to Marcus Johansson, who then one touches it to Matt Boldy. That was a sick, beautiful goal. But still work to be done. And what struck me a little bit, and I didn't fully agree with doing it, was that, this was obviously, I think, born out of the disappointment of the result. But, Marty, on 3 separate occasions in a relatively short media availability after the game, pointing out the 4-minute minor to Cayden Struble as being the source of the loss. Like, you were losing 1-0 at the time, and you lost 3-0. You did not score a goal. Yes, maybe that cut their legs a bit. Maybe they were building some momentum. But if you get out of that form, they were 3 seconds away from coming out of that penalty down 1-0. And there is a natural momentum swing when you kill a penalty like that. Like the team that kills the penalty generally gets a little boost. But I thought, considering the way Struble has played recently, and that was an example of him finding some comfort to actually contribute offensively and try to make something happen in a game where your team was not making anything happen, and just an inadvertent attempted stick lift, misses it, hits the guy in the face. I mean, to call that out, I thought was a curious decision from Marty. And it kind of, I thought, didn't disregard, but it really, when's the last time Marty actually talked about Cayden Struble? It's not his fault. He doesn't get asked about him very often. So it's not like he's purposefully not talking about him, but I found that a bit unfair. Is it dishonest? Is it not true? No, it is true, but I thought it was a little unfair to harp on it over and over again.
I saw 2 things in that. The first one is that when you're trying to identify moments in games where there's been, a key moment, to change in the way the direction blew, or, just key moments in the game, or key letdowns when you look at losses, there was maybe that Marty didn't have too many to choose from. And in that sense, he looks as, well, my team didn't make any glaring mistakes. So if I have to spot one key moment where things, turn for the worst, it's that 4 minutes. So there's that. The other part is that maybe he's shopping for an excuse to put Justin Barron back in the lineup. So in that sense, there's the pairing of Xhekaj and Struble has a shorter leash because it's 3 guys for 2 spots, and Barron, who's who's celebrating his 23rd birthday today. Maybe that, he's been sitting long enough for the coach, and Marty's looking for an opportunity to put him back in the lineup. And for better or for worse, Jayden Struble gave him on a silver platter. It would be unfair because I think that Struble and Xhekaj have been playing some good hockey, but I feel I could sense that decision coming. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Barron plays against Columbus on Saturday.
No, I wouldn't. So I think I actually just realized why he was so hard on Jayden Struble. That penalty happened after he had already been on the ice for 1 minute and 20 seconds. So if I had to guess why Marty was so upset about it, is that instead of trying to create an offensive opportunity there, even though they did have a numerical advantage and Marty pointed that out, maybe his thought was that you should use that opportunity to get off the ice. I'm not sure, but Struble didn't play again until the final 20 seconds of the game, and Xhekaj did get one shift in that span. So, yeah, maybe that is a way to get Justin Barron back in the lineup. But it is, to have that overshadow all the good that Jayden Struble has done, like in a limited role, granted, and a pretty sheltered role, would be kind of unfair to have like one mess up lead to you being out of the lineup. But Barron has to play at some point, so we'll see what happens on Saturday. But yeah, I found that unfortunate because to me that's been a really positive development over the span that you mentioned, is that their third pairing is not a total mess anymore. Xhekaj's been really good, and I talked to him about it on Saturday morning in Toronto before the game.
You mentioned it the last pod.
Well, that's it. But it's just good to see. Like, I think in Minnesota, you saw it even more. Like, his confidence is growing every game. Like he's really starting to get into a good headspace. And his minutes were pretty good in Minnesota. He played 13:37, so that's a pretty good number for him. But yeah, we'll see what happens Saturday. But that's kind of the one blemish, I think, is A, the penalty, and B, Marty emphasizing it more than other things that he could have emphasized.
Is there a bit of a double standard there, where if it was a mistake coming from one of his key guys, maybe that he wouldn't be as hard than on a guy who's basically a complementary player and not as vital to the success of the team?
I think so. I think Marty's we've seen this throughout his time as coach, is very reluctant to call out guys that are core guys. He's very reluctant to call out veterans, and that's just how he is. I don't like it personally. I think there is a double standard on the team, and that is not a great thing to listen. I mean, if we want to run a meritocracy, like, what do you do about Kirby Dach? Kirby Dach looked like he was sleepwalking through that game. Like, he did not look like an engaged player who's looking to get off, to break out of a slump. We were watching, and there was one power play in particular where he was careless with the puck. He looked lazy. He didn't look engaged at all. And I'm like, he should get off the power. Like, this guy should not be on the power play at all.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, that I think it's a relevant segue, and just the number of shifts. By the way, you were talking about Struble being on the ice for 1 minute 20.
Yeah,
every Kirby Dach shift in the third period was over 1 minute, and on average, it was over 1 minute for the duration of the game. So, I mean, but we haven't heard anything about any criticism towards Kirby Dach. But yeah, I mean, he didn't win many battles yesterday. And when you talk about the power play is, it's funny because it's both a way to not récompenser, to reward. Thank you very much. To reward players, and it's also a place where they can develop their confidence and bolster it through the success that they could find on the power play. So you could say, well, Dach is on the power play because it could be an opportunity where he could bolster his confidence and maybe help finding his groove. But just in terms of merit, I know everybody wants to see Lane Hudson on the first unit of the power play, but could it be a situation where instead of taking Matheson out, you could go with two defensemen and just um, taking Dach off the first unit?
Yeah, or you could put Heineman there. I mean, they could use a lefty shooter. Slavkovsky's not shooting the puck too often on the power play, and he's not really in a position to do it when he was usually on the goal line or in front of the net. So it's I just think, like I asked Marty, when was that? I guess it was Wednesday. If there's what's the path to Kirby Dach going back to center? And his first response was, I don't know. And his second part of the response was basically, again, paraphrasing, but basically saying, you know, my priority is to get Kirby back to the level we know he can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's priority number one. So that's what I'm attacking. So basically saying that the best path to that is having Kirby play on the wing and having Kirby play with his top players. And so at what point and really this goes to the overall philosophy of the team and the stage of the rebuild that they're at. And, it's not as consequential to let Kirby play through it and give him these opportunities and keep him on the power play and keep him on the top line if the results are meaningless, if they don't care about results. But they have said that they do care about results. And when you publicly come out at the beginning of the season and say results will matter more now, mistakes will not be as tolerated. Your play will determine your ice time, as Marty said earlier when talking about his defensive zone. At what point do you tell yourself, okay, it's been 6 weeks, we've played roughly close to a quarter of the season, it's not happening with this guy, maybe a little bit of tough love would be merited here. He hasn't earned his spot on the power play. Okay, not only are you off PP1, you're off the power play altogether.
Yeah.
And you're off the top line and you're playing on the third line now. Until you show that you've earned that spot, maybe there's something to that, And it's funny that Marty either doesn't see that or kind of refuses to go in that route. And maybe he knows that Kirby's a guy that won't respond well to that kind of treatment. But Marty is a guy who had to fight through that his whole career, he had to earn every single second of ice time he ever got until he became a superstar player, obviously. But he had, out of anyone, you would think that he would see the value of forcing a guy to earn it and telling a guy you haven't been good enough to merit those minutes. I'm putting you back here. You can work your way back up, but that's on you. I've given you more than enough opportunity. That's on you. Work your way back up there. Because the version of him I watched against Minnesota, and again, the game was overwhelmingly positive in both of our eyes, I guess. Team-wise, that was a positive game. But this, to me, was a glaring negative, is just, the engagement of this player, and that's a word that Marty uses all the time as a criteria of how he's evaluating his team, is not up to standards. And they continue chasing Kirby Dach's ceiling, but Kirby Dach's floor seems to be getting lower. And that's an issue, like that. And we've mentioned it many times, this guy's such an integral part of everything the Canadiens are trying to do. If this guy is not their second line center of the future, then they have a big problem on their hands. So they got to do something.
Yeah. Well, it's probably right now we're probably seeing more the version that the Blackhawks soured on, where they drafted him third overall. They might have seen on occasions the potential and ceiling on that player, but the lack of engagement. I mean, yeah, sure, he missed a whole season. There's plenty of things that you can do that you can explain by the fact that he missed a whole year, and you could say, well, his timing's not entirely back, his speed is not entirely back, or there's some hesitancy in his battles. I don't know, but you cannot, that doesn't explain though. You don't have, it's not because you missed a year of hockey that you don't have to work. I mean, your effort should be a non-negotiable. And again, it's maybe that he's working and it's just the body language that doesn't suggest it, but it doesn't strike me as a guy who's working super hard to win all of his battle, make a second effort in order to win plays, in order to win possession, keep possession.
Especially since winning possession is one of his biggest strengths. Getting pucks back is his superpower. He did it with such regularity the last time he was healthy, and he's just not doing it at all now, because that winning pucks back involves moving your feet, tracking pucks, and they're just things he's not doing very well right now. Not to say that he's not doing them at all, but when you lose your superpower as a player, you better compensate for it in other ways, and I don't feel he's doing that right now.
No, well, we keep hearing about guys need to have a B game. What's your when things don't go your way, when the tools when your normal dimension is not there on a given night, how can you manage to be helpful for the team and contribute in different ways? And it's clear that his A game is not there, but I don't know exactly what's his B game. I would like to see it, because if he's not going to be that dominant player now, which is fine, at least give us something that we can tell that in subtle ways he contributes. That's why I've been willing to give such a pass to Josh Anderson since the beginning of the season, because even though he misses the net, he doesn't score goals, and the guy who used to be like clockwise 20 goal scorer on average every season is not that guy anymore. His B game shows.
Yeah, and 100%.
But Kirby Dach doesn't seem to have a B game.
Not so far. And again, I'm far from writing off Kirby Dach, and I think that all the benefit of the doubt that he's gotten is merited. But that has to run out at some point. And to me, despite everything I just said, I think the Canadiens have to get him back to center as soon as possible and find out if this guy can do that. Like it's okay to have kid gloves for a while, but it's not working. Like him playing on the wing, you're not getting the best version of Kirby Dach that way. Maybe put him at center, but put him at center of the third line. And like keep Evans on the second line and send Kondata down and put Dvorak on the fourth line. Like do something, but the Canadiens need to know if this guy can be their center. And I think the sooner the better. Despite the fact his game is not where it's at, maybe being back at center would trigger some of that. He knows he has to be more engaged. He knows he has responsibilities in the defensive zone. Like maybe that'll get something out of him, but I don't think keeping him on the wing, unless they think he's a winger, which maybe they do, but you might as well find out. You're last overall in the NHL. Find out if this guy could play center. I don't know what they're waiting for. And for Marty to say, I don't know, as his initial response to that question, it's not super encouraging. You'd like to think that there is a path in his mind to when he can reintegrate center. And if you're waiting for Kirby Dach to be the best version of himself before doing that, well, you might be waiting a long time. And I don't think the Canadiens have all this time to work with. I think they need to get him back at center ASAP and see what he can do at that position. Because if you can't play that position, then they need to find someone who can, and those guys don't grow on trees.
Well, if the head coach doesn't know, how is he able to guide his player into that path? You need to have an idea of how you can bring the player where you want him to go. But if you don't know exactly where you want to take him, what is the path to choose? We're a ways away with this player.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, maybe he just doesn't want to say it publicly, which is fine. Like it's oftentimes when Marty says he doesn't know something, he does. He just doesn't want to say it. Like so
Mm-hmm.
that's a definite possibility, if not a probability in this case. But still, I don't think they should keep waiting for the old version of Kirby Dach to come out, because he's had a lot of opportunity. It's November 15th. Christmas is around the corner. Like it's
my presents. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if he's not good at faceoffs, how's he going to get good at faceoffs by not taking faceoffs? And if he's not good as a center, how's he going to get good as a center by not playing center? Like it just seems to me like there's a chicken and egg thing here going on, and I feel like they need to put him back in that position and find out if he can play it or not. Like enough's enough. He's not a baby. You're in the NHL. It's the best league in the world. Go prove yourself. Go show something that merits consideration. And to me, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton are gathering information all season. That's what this season is primarily about. And the information they're getting from Kirby Dach so far has not been all that encouraging.
So you've got Raphaël Harvey-Pinard, who's really knocking at the door, almost ready to come back to play. I don't know if they're going to send him down for a conditioning stint. That would make sense if they want to buy some time to figure out more if Dach is ready or not to come back at center. Otherwise, they would send Lucas Condotta down. That's a possibility there. But do you see with HP coming back the opportunity for Kirby Dach, to synchronize those two events together, where you would have HP coming back, bringing an energy to the bottom six, and have Kirby Dach back at center?
Well, I mean, HP's in somewhat of a similar predicament in the sense that he hasn't played a ton of hockey over the last couple of years. Definitely not this year, but I think he had some he played 45 games last year, so it's not. He's probably going to need a similar amount of time to find his game, and even when he does find his game, who does he take out of the lineup? Like, I'm not taking Emil Heineman out of the lineup.
No.
I'm not taking Joel Armia out of the lineup, even though he's been somewhat underwhelming as well over the last little bit. So I don't quite know where HP fits in this whole equation. But I mean, if you want a guy who's going to help your overall team engagement, then sure, get him in the lineup. And it's just not clear to me who would come out. So, but yeah, I mean, Condotta going down, Dach moving to center, Dvorak taking over the fourth line center role. I don't know who you put. I'd probably put Slav back up on the top line if they do that. Do you put HP on a line with Evans and poor Cole Caulfield in that scenario? But it's or no, not Slav. Sorry, I'll put Caulfield back on the top line. Yeah, not Slav. Yeah. That's already there.
You'd bring the old first line together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it would be like Newhook, Evans, HP, and that's not great. Could be Newhook, Evans, Gallagher. Anyhow, it's HP doesn't solve the main issue for the Canadiens right now, which is the fact that they can't score. And so I'm not quite sure where he fits when he comes back. I would be surprised if he didn't do a conditioning stint in Laval. But what you say makes some degree of sense, that maybe they can use that as a way to move Dach back to center. But whatever pretext they use for it, I think they should prioritize getting Dach back at center as opposed to prioritizing finding the high ceiling Dach that they remember, because that's a distant memory at this point. It's not. And well, I feel like his floor is getting lower the longer this goes, and that's not a good thing either. So you want to cut that before it gets too low, right? So we'll see.
Well, the reason I bring up HP is because since he's waiver eligible, I don't think they're going to, once he's back from a potential conditioning stint, I think they will want to keep him, and they won't try to. They won't risk putting him on waivers and risk losing him.
Well, they have the
So,
roster. They have the roster space. They have a
yeah.
spot open, so they don't have to really do anything. But it's
Which begs the question: how many games will Michael Pezzetta play until the end of the season?
Yeah.
At the end, in the last year of his career, Hal Gill was playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, and he was healthy scratched the whole year. He was not even injured. He ended up playing in only 6 games that year.
Wow. I don't even remember him playing on the Flyers. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
6 games, and the rest of the time it was just long morning skates and being scratched again and again and again. 6 games. So Pezzetta probably is going to play more than that. He's already at 3, so it's encouraging for him.
Yeah, he's on pace.
He's on, yeah. So, but he's not in a situation where especially if they're at 23 guys and they have a second winger waiting in the wings who's younger and who
fills ostensibly the same role. Energy guy, forechecker, kind of that role.
Yeah, but who has a bit more untapped potential, I would say.
Yeah,
I don't 100%. I don't see a lot of hockey, in Pezzetta's future with Montreal. Yeah. So anyway, but I agree with you. At some point, I mean, if the experiment with Dach bringing him back to the wing had been so convincing that you'd say, now he found his groove. We can bring him back to center because he feels good about himself, and it's, he seems closer to the Kirby Dach that we want and that we've seen. It'd be fine. But now, if it doesn't work at one position, might as well put him back at that other position where you originally penciled him in, because you need an answer there. So
yeah. So speaking of waivers, here's another good segue. Cayden Primeau. Now, this is an issue I think that the Canadiens are going to have to address. He is not showing an ability to adequately tend goal in the NHL so far this season. I think there was a fear. Oh, I don't think that there was a fear that the Canadiens would lose Cayden Primeau on waivers last season, which is why he was the third goalie all year.
Yeah.
Do you honestly believe that Cayden Primeau would not get through waivers at this point? Like, which NHL team would look at Cayden Primeau as the solution to their goaltending problems right now? It's really not. I don't see a path to Cayden Primeau getting claimed on waivers. And if that's the case, here's an interesting thing. We were looking at the Laval, the numbers for the Laval goalies. Connor Hughes is doing extremely well, and I think would merit a call up and an audition for that backup role. But you look at the save percentage in the AHL, and they're sky high.
Yeah,
they're all above 915. Like the first page of the save percentage leaders in the AHL, all 915 and up. You do the same exercise in the NHL, you're batting above average if you're in the 900s. It's a definite trend that 900 being the benchmark for a good goalie is no longer necessarily as true now as it was. So it's like save percentages are definitely going down in the NHL. So maybe the AHL would be the best place for Primeau to build up his confidence. Go down there, stop a bunch of pucks, get back to basics, and in the meantime, give this Connor Hughes guy that you got for free a shot to see what he's got. And maybe his numbers are being goosed by that environment in the AHL, and they'll quickly find out. But can't do much worse than what Primeau's doing right now. That's really it's a problem because Canadiens entered that game last night with the worst 5-on-5 save percentage in the league, number 32. And a lot of that has to do with their defensive game, but some of it has to do with the goaltending, and Primeau being the more kind of flagrant one of the two right now. I think it's. Do you think that needs to be addressed, or are they okay just letting it play out? And much like Dach, giving Primeau the time to just figure it out at the NHL level.
Well, the thing is, I think they're a bit stuck with Primeau. First, your first question was to ask me if I thought he would go through waivers. There are teams in today's NHL that are open to the idea of carrying 3 goalies. So does any team think that right now Cayden Primeau is the solution to their problems? Probably not. But would they take him and carry him on the roster as a third goalie for some reason? To me, that's a possibility. You had James Reimer the other day was picked up on waivers by the Sabres. They did not send Devin Levi down. They're keeping 3 goalies for now.
Right.
You have a team like San Jose, for example. They've got Vitek Vanecek and Mackenzie Blackwood, who are both on the last year of their contract. They could decide to shop one of the two early on in the season for a team that say, oh, we like Blackwood. We think that he could be a very good backup for us.
He's off to a good start, yeah.
And then you replace let's say Blackwood with Primeau, because who cares when you're San Jose for now? It's not an issue. And you have a younger goalie that's still under your control for a while. To me, that's not entirely impossible. So
they do have Askarov.
That's true. There's that. yeah. That's just a tiny detail. They have this guy. No. But I mean, it can be just a temporary contingency plan. Yeah, exactly. So my point is, you never know. And with Primeau, if you lose him, then you're stuck because you're forced to call up either Dobesh or Hughes. If you just want to send him down, I don't see that the Canadiens would be necessarily better served by having him down and having, let's say, as you suggest, Connor Hughes in Montreal. I mean, he's a good story, but he's signed for 1 year. Mm-hmm. And right now, I think that he's a lot more in a situation where he's showcasing himself for other organizations, because Jacob Fowler at the end of the year will probably end down to Laval.
Yeah,
he's going, and if and when he does, if the Rocket is in a good position to go deep in the Calder Cup playoffs, I wonder if they're not going to pull a Carey Price with Hamilton
100%.
Back in the day and give Fowler the net, even though you have a very capable goalie in Dobesh over there. So if Connor Hughes might end up being the third wheel just because of Fowler, notwithstanding the situation in Montreal. So I don't really see that happen. To me, it's more maybe trying to move Primeau for an older goaltender. Like Primeau for Reimer would have been, just a swap. Would have made probably more sense. But I don't see a situation where one of the two guys in Laval being the answer to the situation. So because of that, because they're stuck, they're going to wait it out until he figures it out. And if he doesn't figure it out, it's a make or break. To me, it's a make or break year for Cayden Primeau to show if he's able to be good, at least in Montreal. I won't say necessarily in the NHL, but with this organization, he needs to be more convincing. They've been patient, and we've talked about it in the past. Montembeault has proven that you have to be patient with goalies. And I thought that Primeau had turned the corner last year, and I entered the season being very comfortable with him as a backup, but he seems to be going back to his older ways right now. So it's just like with the rest of the team. They're going to wait and see if he can righten the ship, but risking to lose him on waivers just to send him down so that you can either bring a project like Hughes or rush a guy like Dobesh, maybe that they have like good, they have good plans in store for Dobesh, and they see him like a capable goalie. But if you rush him to the NHL, you're just going to repeat the same mistakes that were committed with Primeau.
Yeah, but I would disagree with you on one thing. Like, I think Connor Hughes' position here. Well, first of all, the other scenario we didn't discuss is that Primeau just stays in Montreal and they call up Connor Hughes. And he just stays as a third goalie, works with Eric Rameau, And they have the roster spot, as we mentioned. So they could also choose to do that if they don't want to risk losing Primeau and waivers. I don't think the way you characterize Connor Hughes is entirely fair. Yes, he's on a 1-year contract, but again, they're in information gathering mode. If he could be the backup goalie for this team for 1 or 2 years, why not find that out? You have the opportunity to do so. It's a great story, but it's a great story based on what he's done. I mean, his play in Switzerland last year was remarkable. You know, he led Lausanne to the final, based largely on his play. And so that's a goalie that has some track record to him. You know, he's performed in a pretty high level European Pro League. Why not find out if he could be your backup goalie for a year, next year? You know, it's because even if the scenario that you spelled out with Jacob Fowler, which I think is a very plausible scenario, and if they did call him up, I think they would want him to play, and that they would want to see him perform in that environment. Regardless of how he does in the playoffs, if that scenario were to come to pass, I think we would both agree that Jacob Fowler is 99% assured of playing in Laval next year, no matter what. They're going to want to give him a year in Laval before making the jump to the NHL. So if you have a guy in your organization, you know, the Canadiens didn't sign Connor Hughes so he can audition himself for every other team in the league. They got him to solidify their goaltending in Laval because they saw what happened last year when their goaltending sinks the team.
But Pascal Vincent the other day he said, you know, we've got some guys, and I think he was answering a question about Connor Hughes. We've got some guys that are knowing that it's not only for this organization, but, you know, for the 31 others too.
Sure. But why would that preclude the Canadiens from going and finding out if this guy can fill this specific role? I don't see the downside to it. Honestly, there's nothing preventing. The only downside would be that you'd be taking away Laval's best goalie. That's the only downside. That the one who's performed the best so far out of the two has been Connor Hughes. Not to say that, you know, Jacob Dobish is obviously long term has probably a brighter future than Hughes does, but Hughes to me strikes me as a guy who could potentially fill a backup goalie role in the short term while the Canadiens figure out their goaltending. I don't see why he couldn't do that. And if he can't, then so be it. Then you found out and you send him back to Laval, and when his contract runs out, he can go sign with another team, and that's fine. But under the current circumstances, I don't see why you wouldn't give him a shot. Say, here, let's see what you can do. Get a few starts periodically as a normal backup would. Yeah. And let's see if you can do the job. And if they don't want to put Primeau on waivers, they don't have to. Just keep him around.
Well, yeah. So basically, when I said having Primeau as your third goaltender, it would be in Montreal.
Yeah, it's another possibility, right? I mean, when you said that, I was
what? That's not half stupid. That's
that's what I aim for. That's my goal, is to be not half stupid. Yeah, but I think it's worth a shot. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know to which extent though he's necessarily been a lot better than Jakub Dobeš. I mean, statistically, he's got better numbers, but you know, I haven't seen every Rocket game. It's hard for me to really gauge, you know, if Dobeš has not been the difference maker in some of their wins. But
I'm not saying he hasn't. I'm just saying he's got better numbers than he does right now. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's just that the comparison with 2007. And you know, when I mentioned Carey Price in Hamilton, it's funny because Fowler in this scenario, Fowler is Carey Price.
Yes.
Samuel Montembeault is Christophe Allouet. Yes. Jakub Dobeš is Yaroslav Halak.
Yeah.
And you've got Connor Hughes, who could be Jan Denny and all that, you know.
Who also played in Switzerland.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how that's going to turn out, and if one day there's going to be a big debate in Montreal as to should they have kept Dobesh instead of Fowler? I don't know. That would be very ironic if we ever ended up there. But
this will be a historic episode of the podcast if that actually turns out to be true. This will be the most clipped episode of our podcast ever if that actually happens.
That'd be so funny, man.
Yeah, but honestly, like I'm just looking at it now. Hughes played 18 games in the NL playoffs last year in Switzerland. 1.91 goals against, 933 save percentage, 11-6-1 record. I mean, 940 save percentage in 19 games in the regular season. Like it's worth exploring. That's all I'm saying. You have You have the guy. He's sitting right there. Like why not see if he could be like he would be the perfect stopgap solution to a problem that you seemingly have, unless Primeau could figure it out, which he might. He might figure it out if you just give him a little break, the way other teams have done this year with their goalies. Tristan Jarry spent some time in the AHL spent some time away from the team. Did he get sent down? He didn't get sent down.
He was sent down. Yeah. Yeah,
so it's happened where, Ilya Samsonov last year, the Leafs just kind of shut him down for a while and worked with him and, kind of figured it out after. So maybe Primeau just needs that step back, and you could do that without putting him on waivers, and see what Hughes has. I don't know. I think I would give it a shot.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of a situation like Kirby Dach where you're trying to catch again the player that you thought you once had because the Primeau from last year showed signs that he could potentially be like a capable backup, and you'd be okay for the next little while until the goalies of the future sort themselves out, and you could go with Montembeault and Primeau. I'm not ready to blame, and we've discussed that in a previous episode. I'm not really. I don't think that Montembeault carries a lot of the blame for how the Canadiens have played and how many goals they've given up so far this season. But in limited action, Primeau has been far more concerning because it seems as though the minute that he gives up a goal or that he makes a very, very shaky save, then after that he just crumbles. And it's the Primeau we used to see 2 and 3 years ago. So
no, he's giving up bad goals.
Yeah.
So Sam Montembeault is giving up far fewer bad goals. Listen, he is second. He's the second worst goal saved above expected in the NHL in only 7 starts, and that's a counting stat. That's a cumulative stat. So in 7 games, he is at minus 6.1 goals saved above expected. Only Alexander Georgiev is worse. Interestingly, third worst is Jordan Binnington, the guy who everyone is giving the Team Canada starting job to seemingly right now. Sam Montembeault is far down this list in terms of worst. He's 26th worst. That's a mouthful, but it's in only 7 appearances to have the second worst goal saved above expected according to Evolving Hockey. I think it's it matches the eye test so far to me. So,
okay, you mentioned Tristan Jarry and so obviously the goalie in Pittsburgh.
Look at this segue. Look at you segueing. This is great. This is just a segue. This is a segue spectacular. This is just,
no, that's great.
Excellent.
I'm finding excuses and opportunities wherever they may be. So I wanted to make a quick stop in Pittsburgh because Lars Eller, good old Lars Eller. Lars Eller is the great Quebec nickname.
Lars Eller,
But I also always remember the way that the PA announcer in Boston used to call him Lars Eller. So anyway,
Montreal penalty to Lars Eller. 2 minutes for holding Lars Eller.
So he was traded from Pittsburgh to Washington in a move that a lot of people thought this is early fire sale in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And it got us
coming on the heels of reports that Kyle Dubas is telling his colleagues that everyone but Sid is available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Canadiens could they be, not to be outdone? Could they consider an early move? We know them that they've got plenty of guys that are on expiring deals. Pretty much all of their penalty killers. So
Yes.
Armia, Dvorak, Evans, Savard, all on expiring deals. Do you see a scenario where the Canadiens could consider moving on from one of those guys, like at this point in the season, mid-November, instead of waiting until trade deadline?
I think the only guy they would do that with is Dvorak. If they found someone who was willing to take Dvorak, I think they would do it. It's not that, he is probably the least important of the four. He's not coming back.
Him and Armia.
Armia is making that a close. Armia is making that debatable. I would agree with that. But I do think that I don't know the extent to which the Canadiens feel this way, but I do see a path to Armia re-signing with the team at a lower number.
Wow.
I could see that.
Really?
How are you going to find a guy like that would be willing to accept $1.5 million a year on a 2-year term on the free agent market? I'm not saying that Armia would accept that, but I could see him wanting to stay and being willing to make concessions to do that. That's my only point.
Why would
you seem puzzled by that?
Yeah, why would you sign like a bottom six winger that's you know exactly what he's about? You could tell me, you'd say to me, oh, I think that they would bring back at a lower number David Savard for 2 years, and I could certainly see it.
Yeah.
That I would. Evans goes without saying to me. It would.
Well, they're not getting Evans at a lower number. That's for sure.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But re-signing him, it's almost logical, but it makes plenty of sense. Let's just put it there. But Armia, really?
That's possible.
They've got a lot of guys that could fill a bottom six role next season for them. And
they're all young. If they want to keep some semblance of a veteran presence, I'm just saying, listen, I'm not saying it's likely. I'm saying it's possible. Yeah. And so all that to say that, yes, if they were, of the four guys who were expiring, I think Dvorak is the one that they would entertain the most because, frankly, I think Condotta has been good as a fourth line center. He's filling his mandate well. He's a good forechecker, relatively mistake-free player. I think he could potentially kill penalties at some point. Like, I think he's been pretty good. I would say that a pleasant surprise since his call-up. Limited minutes, all that stuff. But I have nothing bad to say about how Lucas Condotta has played. Yes, is he going to provide any offense? No, of course not. But that's not what he's being asked to do. If they were to trade Dvorak, it would leave a hole on their penalty kill for sure. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it would leave as large a hole. And again, Armia is making this debatable, as large a hole as trading any of the other three guys. But if they're going to get a return like the Penguins got for Eller, then no. Like, what is Kyle Dubas like? I can't imagine a bigger white flag being raised by any general manager than trading like a highly useful third line centerman for a third and a fifth, and the third being in 2027.
Yeah, but it's far. But 2027, it's a good bet that this is the year where the Pittsburgh Penguins, Pittsburgh Penguins will be truly bad. It's a better investment long term.
No, you mean the Capitals will do that? They're getting the Capitals' third round pick in 2027.
Right.
So
yes. Yeah, that's
yeah.
it. Yeah,
but it's just it's not a great return for Lars Eller.
No,
is what I'm saying. And so
no,
I don't think the Canadiens
he's been traded for second rounders. I think a year or two
almost ago. Exclusively. Yeah, he always gets traded for a second rounder. He got traded for 2 second rounders. I think did Montreal trade him away for 2 seconds? No. Yeah, they did. That's when they got when they went out and got Andrew Shaw. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so I don't think this management group is going to want to send that message the way Kyle Dubas sent it to his team. Like, I am raising the white flag, and I do not think the Canadiens are ready to do that. They don't need more draft picks. Like, that's the thing, is that they're not desperate for more draft picks. What I think their priority right now is managing the psyche of their young group and balancing their own team building objectives with maintaining that psyche of their captain, their young top goal scorer, Slavkovsky, all these guys, even Dach, and sending them the message that we are now going into a losing phase and that we're extending this asset accumulation phase that we said we were exiting would not be the best thing. So just on a philosophical basis, I would doubt they would do that. But if a team comes calling and saying, wow, we really need Christian Dvorak, can you send him to us, keep half his salary and send him to us? I mean, first of all, the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim, but second of all, I think they'd have to consider it. But I think philosophically that they're going to avoid selling as long as they can because this team, the players on this team are sick of being sellers. They've voiced that, and that would send the wrong message to this group this early in the season. But kudos to Kyle Dubas for doing it, because I think that group needs that message to be sent to them, because I think there are players there who probably don't realize how dire the situation is, and this spells it out for them quite plainly. And I don't think that same message needs to be sent in Montreal.
No, I think every day that the few veterans that are in Montreal stay with the team to help out and, surround the young core, it can be useful. The day, if they are to trade Savard at the deadline, that day will hurt. It'll be like a Band-Aid that you strip off and it hurts the skin.
Yeah.
Just exactly the way that we saw with Sean Monahan last year. To me, it's going to be same level the day that they moved David Savard.
Yeah. Sean Monahan, who's back on Saturday with his Columbus Blue Jackets and playing extremely well. Good for him. Kind of happy to see it. But okay, let's go from that to Future Friday, because it's Friday.
Is it?
Yes, it is. Future Friday. Okay, so our Future Friday focus, you had a conversation that I think you'd like to share with our listeners. What did you speak to?
I spoke to Sam Harris. So Sam Harris, the fastest rising Canadiens prospect you've never heard about.
We have a piece coming out on The Athletic where every team has to pick their fastest rising prospect, and I picked Sam Harris.
Sam Harris, for good reason. I mean, before this weekend, he's the leading goal scorer in all of the NCAA with 9 goals in 9 games. 4 of those 9 goals are game winners. Mm-hmm. That's pretty impressive. And he's doing that playing less than 14 minutes each night. It's worth remembering, though, that he's not – last year he was not a true freshman. This is his second year with the Denver Pioneers, but he's already 21 years old. Mm-hmm. So he's not an old prospect per se, because when you look at the pool of players in the NCAA, it ranges from 17 and can go all the way up to 26. So that at 21, he's really in the middle, if not slightly younger than the average. But before we start thinking, here's a guy who 1 year after his draft, he's setting the NCAA on fire. Let's take it easy. But I think that there's a very interesting development going on with this kid, who's not the fastest skater, not the biggest guy, but he's got a knack for scoring goals, and he loves going into the dirty areas. Mm-hmm. His father grew up in Montreal. Actually, his father's family is from Montreal. His mother's family is from Sweden. He speaks fluent Swedish, by the way.
Oh, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But he himself was born in San Diego, grew up in California, and he grew up idolizing Montreal and Anaheim. And his 2 favorite players were Brendan Gallagher and Corey Perry. So that gives you what you need to know about the style of player that he likes to be,
Mm-hmm.
getting his nose dirty and finding ways to wreak havoc in front of the net. And so far, it's paid off. He's been a fixture on their power play. He's been very effective there. And this is a team, obviously, Denver won the national championships last year. They had 11 freshmen, so they had key players, but there was also a bunch of young guys. A lot of their key players left after last season. So I'm thinking of Massimo Rizzo, Tristan Bras, Sean Barons, the defenseman. I think he was a Colorado pick, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, there's a bunch of guys.
Shai Bouillon is no longer there, right?
Shai Bouillon's not there anymore. No,
Yeah.
Shai Bouillon's not there anymore. Obviously, Zeev is there, his younger brother. So Zeev, so the Bouillons are also from San Diego. So in the off season, Sam Harris trains with Zeev Bouillon.
No.
And so now you've got a guy who struggled to find his place on that stacked roster last year. He took advantage of a couple of injuries around mid-February, and he went from being a fourth-line guy to like playing a more predominant role. So he finished on a really strong note all the way to the Frozen Four. And then this year, he started the season with a more significant role, and I started by saying that the Canadiens had a prospect that no one had heard of before. Of course, it's half jokingly because we've got hardcore Canadiens fans who are listening to us, and they know that name.
Yes,
but still, just this year, Rob Ramage went to see him, and he was there for the 2 home opening games of Denver. Mm-hmm. So if Rob Ramage is there right at the beginning of your season, it means that there's, in terms of how they value their prospects, it's interesting to me that Rob Ramage makes sure that right at the beginning he's going to be there to see Sam Harris in action. So, and he has not disappointed. So I'm not sure if he's going to be able to keep up that way. I don't expect him to, because 9 goals in 9 games, that's completely nuts. But it's an interesting gamble. He's a 5th round pick, and Gallagher was a 5th round pick. So will they have? The other guy I was thinking when writing about Sam Harris was not just Gallagher, but also Jared Davidson, who also is not the fastest guy, but who's got, who likes to score from short distance, and who's very combative in his style of play, and he was drafted also as an overager in the 5th round. So I don't know if he's going to be Davidson or Gallagher, but he's in that sphere in terms of style of player.
Yeah, he's also an interesting guy. I also had a chance to talk to him at development camp, and so I was doing a story on, how Adam Nicholas and his staff were running development camp, and I wanted to ask him about it. And so this is just an insight into kind of who he is and how he views the game. There was one drill that Adam was running where a player would rim the puck up the wall, and to the naked eye or the untrained eye, or to me, it just looked like players were just picking the puck off the wall and sending a pass into the slot. Pretty basic stuff, right? Talking to Sam Harris, I learned that what the point of that drill was to do that action on 1 foot as opposed to 2. And so this is what he said at the time. It was something I'd never done before, but it's something we're going to work on again tomorrow, which I'm excited about. It's picking a puck up off 1 loaded foot and being able to 1 touch it and snap it to the middle to the F3, the guy in the scorer's elbow. I've always learned to pick it up with 2 feet, keep your feet moving and stuff like that. But being able to pick it up with 1 loaded leg instead of 2, with more pressure on the outside leg, and you snap it right to the middle from the wall. It was a drill meant to make more efficient use of your time in a situation that happens countless times in a game. But it was his excitement that I found so intriguing. He was genuinely excited to do that. And if you watch this drill, it doesn't look exciting. Like it's just to call it exciting would be the furthest thing from my mind. But he was excited about learning something new about the game. Like he just seems like a really engaged kid. And if you want to see video of the drill, you can find my piece back in July on it. But he like his eyes were like wide. Like he was genuinely excited to learn this really specific, somewhat banal skill.
Mm-hmm.
But it really drove him. Like it really turned his crank, And so I think that desire and that enthusiasm to improve is something he seems to have. But yeah, I think his start has been incredibly encouraging. And it's not as if, you mentioned all the players that have left the University of Denver. They're undefeated. They're the number one team in the country. They're 10-0. It's not like he's doing this on some rebuilding team. He's doing it on the best team in the country and the best offensive team in the country. Like he is driving that offense with a lot of help, obviously, but they're the top scoring team in the nation. They haven't lost a game. I might have just jinxed them for this weekend, but still, Sam Harris is a major part of that. He's not a passenger in that whole thing.
No, and when you mentioned the drills during development camp, another drill that they made that they practice was reverse hitting, and he's big into reverse hitting because I mentioned Gallagher and Corey Perry, but like from the olden days, Peter Forsberg was his guy, and he being a guy who likes to play a certain form of physical hockey. Mm-hmm. Sam Harris is really inspired by Peter Forsberg, was really made an art of the reverse hits.
Yes,
and so they practice that at development camp too, and he says that's really something that I've applied to my game, and I catch opponents by surprise by doing those. And when you describe your own drill, being able to do a one-touch pass on 1 foot, I'm thinking also you make a hit and you gain possession as you're making that hit, and you get rid of the puck right away because there's a chance that as you make that hit, you might be off balance for a split second. Uh-huh. If you're able to make a pass while you're off balance and you're on 1 foot, then you're going to make a very interesting 2-for-1. You're winning your battle, you're hitting an opponent, and as you gain possession, you pass it right away. To me, those two things could be connected, and that's probably where his enthusiasm come from, because he says, well, I'm thinking I can assert my physical play and drive offense with those little subtle moves like that.
So yeah, really intriguing prospect, 5th round pick. It's looking like good value for the Canadiens, and someone to keep an eye on for Canadiens fans. It's not only Ivan Demidov and Michael Hage that's worth watching. There's a kid out in Denver that is worth monitoring as well. So with that, we'll wrap up the show for this Friday. Thank you all for watching / listening. As a reminder, if you have not yet subscribed to our podcast, you can do so at BasuandGodin.com. The Friday episode will remain free all year and will be available on YouTube in its entirety all year. The Monday episode is now behind a paywall. There's only a preview available, both in audio and video form. If you want the full Monday episodes, you will have to have a paid subscription. If you don't want a paid subscription, you can still get a free subscription if you want to get emails reminding you of when our episodes are out. But obviously a paid subscription is better as far as we're concerned. And
it unlocks the world of opportunity.
It unlocks the whole world of opportunity. And we have been discussing the possibility of doing some bonus episodes only for our paid subscribers. And so I think we'll start doing that occasionally, kind of shorter bonus audio only episodes. And to our founding members, we will shortly be sending you an email regarding our next Google Meet, which will happen next week. So check your inboxes for that. And you'll be receiving that email relatively shortly, probably over the weekend. Hopefully you can make it. But other than that, have a good weekend, everyone. Let's see the big Sean Monahan return, how that goes on Saturday. Obviously, that's the night that Shea Weber is going to be inducted into the Canadiens Ring of Honor for his induction into the Hall of Fame, and that's the headline story for Saturday. But we will talk to you about that and other things on Monday.
All right. Well, have a good weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Basu Godin Notebook. Basu Godin Notebook.